I now call the February 7th, 2017 regular council meeting to order. Would council members please denote your presence by depressing your yes switch? I think you read it, and then do I need to excuse Councilman Huckabee? Or do you have to read anything?
Well, all members are present except Councilman Huckabee. And I would suggest then that the chair entertain a motion by minute action to excuse her presence.
Got that. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, excuse the absence of Councilman Huckabee.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Murphy. Yes. Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With Councilman Murphy, with all members voting aye, motion passes.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the January 17th, 2017 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on January 26th, 2017.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Any corrections? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the February 7th, 2017 bills and claims as audited by City Manager McDonald.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Abstentions? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
I'm just changing the way we pronounce your name. I don't know. Now I want to talk a little bit about something wonderful that a big group of people came together and completed. The annual point in time count is an event triggered by a federal requirement that persons who are homeless are counted and documented through surveys on one day annually. Wyoming performs the count on the last Friday in January each year. The purpose of the event is to obtain the locations and numbers of persons who are homeless and needing assistance so that federal funding can be allocated to increase housing and social services to those communities. I'd like to share with you some of the key points and highlights from this count. The count was combined with a Project Connect event where 47 social service agencies across the city joined to provide resources for our homeless population. So 47 agencies. Volunteers canvassed the streets from 6:30 a.m. until 10 o'clock p.m., completing those surveys. Serve Wyoming organized and scheduled all volunteers for setup, street canvassing, kitchen assistance, greeting, and tear down and cleanup. Casper Housing Authority personnel secured the 47 local agencies to participate. Almost every agency in the city participated. The Casper Police Department assisted. The Casper Fire Department was available if needed. Code Enforcement and Housing Division also supported this effort. Rocky Mountain Food Bank brought in food to be cooked for the 3 meals that were offered that day, and over 200 meals were served. Wyoming Food for Thought brought all full grocery bags to hand out to those in need. Items offered for donations included coats, hats, gloves, hoodies, sweatshirts, blankets, sleeping bags, 300 towels from a hotel, hygiene bags, which many of the churches and public provided, bus tokens, shower cards for the YMCA, gift bags, and miscellaneous items like gum, hot cold cups, samples, toothbrushes, toothpaste, and much more. Some free services were also offered: haircuts, flu and pneumonia vaccinations, rapid test HIV and TB tests, medical and dental checkups with free follow-up appointments scheduled, the 3 meals, legal aid, depression screenings, veterinarian checkups for those that had animals. They also got free dog food, bus tokens, and I believe I mentioned the shower cards at the YMCA. This was one of the largest point-in-time counts ever held in the city of Casper. The connections between the homeless population and agencies, as well as interagency connections, were outstanding. We offer a thank you to all that participated, and although there is not enough time to honor each of you individually, we'd like those of you that were involved to please stand so that we can recognize you. We'd now like to the representatives from the Kings Corner Outreach Center to come forward to receive a certificate of appreciation. All of this would not have been possible had the Kings Corner Outreach Center not been the operational base. The center is a trusted and welcoming community facility for the homeless, and we would like to thank you for supporting this event. Do we need the photo op? Oh, okay.
Got it.
There you go. At this time, we would also like to recognize one of our own, Joy Clark, Housing and Community Development Technician, for coordinating the 2017 point-in-time count on behalf of the city. Joy, would you please come forward? We'd like to thank you for faithfully serving as an advocate for the homeless and the social service agencies that were involved. Okay, Tanya's totally going to put this on Facebook. Thanks, Gal. She's a humble lady. She said we all coordinated it together, and you guys did an amazing job. I'm pretty proud to know all of you, so thank you. Please read the consent agenda titles.
Establish February 21st, 2017 as a public hearing date for consideration of zoning of the Wolf Creek 9 addition, located generally west of Aspen Place and south of Talon Drive, as R4 high-density residential for lots 1 through 17 and R2 one-unit residential for lots 18 through 73. Establish March 7th, 2017 as the public hearing date for consideration of the following 2 items. The transfer of ownership and location for retail liquor license number 8, Z Financial Administration and Management, Inc., doing business as Z Financial, located at 1121 Wilkins Circle, to Good To Go Stores, LLC, doing business as Good To Go, located at 1968 East Yellowstone Avenue. And the issuance of a new restaurant liquor license number 32, Kodo Casper, Inc., doing business as Kodo Restaurant, located at 5091 East 2nd Street.
The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Morgan, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Okay, sorry, you guys kind of sound alike for me. Abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
You making fun of me a little bit? Okay. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of location of retail liquor license number 21, Modern Electric Company, doing business as Wyoming Bootlegger Liquor, from 246 West 1st Street to 240 West 1st Street. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
I do, Your Honor. I have 4 exhibits for this item. Exhibit number 1 being correspondence from Tracy Belser to VH McDonald, dated February 5th, 2017. Exhibit number 2, that being the affidavit of publication, as published in the Casper Star Tribune, that document dated February 6th of 2017. Exhibit number 3, that being the affidavit of website publication as published on the City of Casper website, dated January 18th, 2017. And exhibit number 4, that actually being the liquor license application in this matter, which was filed with the city on December 5th, 2016.
The lovely acting city manager report.
Your Honor, members of council, the City of Casper received the application for the transfer of the location for retail liquor license number 21 from Modern Electric, which does business as Wyoming Bootlegger Liquor, to move it from 246 West 1st Street to 240 West 1st Street. The location is in the same building but has a different address as noted on the overhead projection. Retail liquor license number 21 does have some conditions and restrictions which were attached in your memo, and they will remain in effect unless council elects or decides in the future to rescind those. The retail liquor license is currently parked and must be operational by February of 2018. The applicant plans on opening a packaged liquor store in April of 2017 in the building which most of us remember as Seasons Day Spa. The requirements of the municipal code state that the transfer of a location must be published in the local newspaper for 4 consecutive weeks and take place 30 days prior to the expiration of the current liquor license. The requirements of the state statute state that renewal must take place 30 days prior to the expiration of the current liquor license. And like the transfer, the renewal must also be published in the local newspaper for 4 consecutive weeks. The renewal discussion will come before you at the February 21st, 2017 council meeting. Staff has complied with all publication requirements, and that concludes the city manager's report.
At this time, I'd ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the transfer of location for the liquor license, please approach the lectern. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor? At this time, I'd ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition, please approach the lectern. Anyone who wants to speak in opposition? There being no one to speak for or against the transfer of location of retail liquor license number 21, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the transfer of location of retail liquor license number 21.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Pacheco. I'm just calling Councilman P. Discussion. Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had a condition E in there will be no cooking in the storage or patio area. And I think that's a holdover, but I know typically on parade day, I think every bar in town cooks outdoors. So I guess this is just limited to the covered patio area. Is that what we're?
If I may, Madam
Please.
Mayor, those are restrictions that were placed upon the sandbar at the time that this liquor license was at that location, and they decided they wanted to have an outdoor patio. And so these restrictions were put in place at that time. They have attached to the license and will stay on until council would remove them upon request of the, it would have to be upon the request of the license holder, and we could consider that later. I would suggest that they probably remain there at this time, because if the license for whatever reason would in the future be transferred back to the sandbar location or under the prior ownership of the individual that problems had developed, it'd be good to keep those restrictions in place until this license, until council really knows where this license is going to go.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Councilman Powell and then Councilman Walsh.
I think Mr. Lubin responded to my question, but these restrictions have been in place for 5 years now, and I know we've discussed them in the past because they dealt with a very specific set of circumstances that we had with the license holder back at that time, and it seems at some point in time we should consider whether they still need to apply. They can't just be there indefinitely. And so I don't know if this is the right time for us to reconsider that. I understand what Mr. Lubin is saying, that there's always a risk, but it's my understanding that the sandbar is no longer going to be in operation as a bar or restaurant, and I guess I would just like for us to, it only comes up when a transfer or some event occurs or a renewal, and at some point we should remove these.
Councilman Walsh?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was involved in the restrictions in this that went on these. And I think the city attorney advice is wise, only because right now there isn't a patio and there isn't those types of things in a packaged liquor store. So if something were to come up and it was a burden, we could speak to the owners if they wanted to address us. The only thing I would say, wait and see where that ends up. If it's going to be into another full retail bar, we just do the due diligence on it on that end, and then once that transfer occurs, we can decide whether or not to remove any or all of them.
Okay. Further discussion? Amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Please read the consent ordinances on second reading by title only.
An ordinance approving the Raven Crest Edition subdivision agreement and the vacation and replat creating Raven Crest Edition comprising 6.6 acres more or less. An ordinance approving an annexation, vacation, replat, and subdivision agreement for the proposed Wolf Creek 9 Edition in the city of Casper, Wyoming.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the consent ordinances just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Morgan. Abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Council will now discuss the resolution for the electronics recycling program. Because this is not on a consent agenda, it will be open for discussion by the council. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with Electronic Recyclers International, Inc. for processing, deconstruction, and recycling of electronics waste for the Casper Regional Solid Waste Facility.
The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution just read.
So moved.
I'll move it forward with a second.
Okay, moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. Acting City Manager report.
Your Honor, members of council, a little bit of history about electronics recycling. The city of Casper, with our landfill, has participated in recycling since the early 2000s, and in 2007 was well underway with handling of the disposal of this. In 2009, the council did put into place an ordinance change that we could no longer bury the waste out at the regional landfill. And at that point, NowCap stepped up, and as a facility, they offered an opportunity for the city to utilize their staff in helping as a recycling center, and they started managing the city's electronic waste. However, NowCap has recently lost its federal funding and does not have the wherewithal to continue with this electronic waste disposal starting in March of this year. Therefore, our city team went out and requested some proposals from a multitude of different electronics recycling companies. The two that responded to the RFP that was issued in October of this past year, one was out of Stockton, California, and one was out of Aurora, Colorado. We looked at the costs that were provided in the proposal for the transportation of the waste to the locations, and it was decided that because of the location in Stockton, the cost to transport was very prohibitive. So in fact, staff then worked forward to look forward into a contract, which is proposed tonight, to work with Electronics Recyclers International electronic waste facility, which is in fact located in Aurora, Colorado. The fee to transport the waste down there and to utilize their services is approximately $57,400, which is on the high end of what we anticipate as far as the cost. This would include the disposal, but also the recycling and breaking apart that waste and brokering the waste. The city typically collects about 164,000 pounds of electronics per year. Funding for this project would continue over approximately a 5-year period, which is the term that is proposed with the contract before you. To be for a 5-year term, that would come from the bail fill operations budget. And again, we anticipate the $57,400 being on the high end. That would conclude the city manager's report. I would like to offer up, though, that our solid waste division manager, Cynthia Langston, is here this evening. Should council have some more technical questions about the recycling program, not only at our landfill, but also what we would anticipate out of this contract.
Okay, discussion. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And we had a good briefing from Cindy Langston earlier, and she provided some fantastic information. But it looks to me like we're spending $57,000 on a measure that's more politically correct than it is necessary for us. We have the space in the facility to put this stuff in our own landfill. We would need to change our ordinance. In the long run, over the term of this contract, we're going to save, half or $250,000 by not doing it. We gain nothing by moving forward with it. We have the space, and that's a lot of money for goodwill that's just not necessary for us to do. And as Cindy Langston pointed out to us, a lot of this is recycled, but anything that is not is going into somebody's landfill, and that would be in Colorado. So for that reason, I'm not going to support this.
Okay, Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In light of the fact that we have lined landfill areas and EPA now allows us to go in a lined landfill, I concur with Councilman Walsh that I will oppose this contract.
Okay, Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question for acting assistant manager person, Betcher. So just quick question for you. You mentioned that the contract for that $57,000 is them actually hauling it down there. I just didn't see an actual line item for the responsibilities of them actually taking that on. So could you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, Your Honor, and I misspoke on that. The transportation cost we had looked into, and Public Services Director, Mr. Beamer, had said that's about $4,000 to $5,000 on the transportation cost. The contract would be for the disposal, the recycling component that they're doing, and brokering the waste. Transportation was separate from that,
okay.
$57,400. So I apologize for the misstatement.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Could I follow up with Cynthia? Is that okay? Cindy, okay.
My mother calls me Cynthia. Hi, I'm Cindy Langston, the solid waste manager.
Thanks, Cindy. I just had a question. I know the staff did due diligence in putting an RFP out there. I was just curious, did we reach out to other municipalities? I did hear somebody mention bags in Converse County. I did speak to Cheyenne. Cheyenne transports it to Fort Collins, so I was just curious as to why we're transporting it all the way to Aurora, and what other options did you see? And I'm sorry if you already talked about this earlier.
Councilman Morgan, that's a really good question. MedTech actually is the Fort Collins recycler, and we had MedTech before NowCap, and they're out of Fort Collins. They actually chose not to handle our waste. One thing that we don't do that Cheyenne does is they package them in plastic. They wrap them up on a pallet, and we just place them in plastics. And so they don't like our method of transportation. So MedTech did not even bid on it, even though we sent them the RFP. So that's one of the many that we sent the RFP out to. As far as contacting the other communities with Glen Rock and the town of Baggs, I have not done that. But I have Rollins, because Rollins is the next biggest generator next to us, and said, you know, there's a high likelihood, because recycling discussions are going on all over the states because of the current economy. Recycling is always that low-hanging fruit of where you can cut budget costs. So they're aware, because I said, you know, it's just possible that when this goes before council, they may change the electronics ban, or they may change how we actually manage electronics. So they're aware. And they understand. They do have in Rollins a really active group, kind of like the city of Torrington I mentioned was the one that really started electronics waste recycling in the state. They have a really strong community in Rollins that likes to divert. They have their own downtown material recovery facility. So it'll be unpopular, but they understand that it may happen.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up, Cindy, I did reach out also to Billings, just another big city, I guess, in that area. They partnered with other counties, and as I was mentioning, other municipalities for that specific reason. They spend $30,000 a year with their partnership with also Yellowstone E-Wasters, I believe is the name of it. Has anyone reached out just to see if anybody was interested in starting a specific e-waste facility that we could partner with as the city of Casper?
The only one I'm aware of is NowCap, and the only reason they were willing to do it is because of their federal grant, and unfortunately they lost their federal grant. Co-ops in Wyoming, there's always a lot of talk amongst the communities about co-oping, and we probably could do electronics recycling for $25,000 a year if we were very, very tight in our screening. And made sure it was the high dollar stuff like the computers and the video games and those kind of things instead of the curling irons or whatever for the electronics. So we could make it tighter and better. And the co-op, it's one of our carrots with the city of Casper being a regional landfill. Every time we get garbage from out of our Natrona County community, it's always, will you recycle? That's always the first question, is because recycling to them is actually very, very cost effective where it isn't here. Because if they have to ship their garbage to Casper, they're paying our tipping fee, which is $47 a ton. If they shipped their recycling material to us, that's a lot less of a tipping fee to process. So it's really in their best interest to take it to a regional landfill that diverts. So in that sense, there's a big group of small landfills that want to co-op, and we are doing that for the little communities right now that are taking their waste to us. And like I said, it's a popular program, but that doesn't mean it's free. It's very costly. And a question that was asked of me earlier too about the landfill space. The landfill space that the electronics takes up is probably closer to 10 to 15,000 than that 25,000, just because we are so cost effective at burying waste here. So there is a cost, and that cost is provided in our trash collection fee, so it's definitely not free.
Okay, go ahead.
Last question, I hope. Have we looked at the possibility, so $4,000 for transporting and possibly to Aurora, possibly cheaper if we change our packaging practices here in Casper to Fort Collins? Have we looked at just trying to change it and then also unload it ourselves just to save it? Because basically we're just paying somebody to simply sort it, unload it. People do a pretty good job here in Casper putting the newspapers in the newspaper box and not, the cardboard box, for instance. So if we did our due diligence as a community and packaged it correctly, do you feel that we could possibly go to Fort Collins for a certainly cheaper rate than what's proposed tonight?
Let me clarify about the packaging. We actually do it cheaper than Cheyenne. Our packaging is a lot less costly than the ones that send it to Fort Collins and MedTech because they use a plastic wrap and a pallet, which we don't. We use a reusable one. And actually our staff and us sorting it and screening it, I think we're some of the best in the state. We could, though, and I have asked these questions about us transporting it ourselves. We do have several employees who have Class A CDL license, and it's more of a question. I know that WARM, our liability pool, covers Cheyenne, which they transport it themselves with their city staff, all their waste to Colorado. So we could do that, so that $45,000 that the city manager mentioned is actually something that we could significantly reduce by hauling it with city staff. So that we could do.
Thank you.
Would that require hiring additional staff?
No, it would not. We could incorporate that into our existing operations, because it's maybe 6 trips a year.
Councilman Powell.
So Cindy, just to give us some perspective, we're talking about a maximum of 80 tons, if I'm getting
That's
it correctly.
82 tons.
Can you give us some perspective on how much trash that is compared to what we collect?
Boy, it's insignificant. That's such a good question, Your Honor, from Councilman Powell, because 82 tons, just to put perspective, we actually collect up to 400 tons a day at this facility. We are truly a huge facility for Wyoming, not so much for the United States, but 82 tons is really it's less than 1%. It is, very recyclable. As Councilman Walsh said, there's about 96% of the recyclable material that is recycled, and the other 4% goes to a landfill. It's not like metals, though. Metals pays because they don't charge you for metals to process it. So, but they do electronics because they have to break it down, take all the screws out, pull it apart, do all those things.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Just a quick comment. I don't think you have to be a left-wing liberal environmentalist to appreciate recycling and support recycling. And while I'll probably be voting against this specific resolution, I think it's also to keep mindful that it's a lot easier to bury things and to forget about them for future generations. And I know that's only 82 tons, but also the understanding if you have children and leaving that environment for your children to be able to do that. So I think that's an important aspect to remember as we move forward with that. It was brought to us by citizens about wanting to recycle more. So to be mindful of what the citizens are also asking us and being mindful of what they would like to see for us. And I completely understand where this is coming from for us to be able to save money to be able to do it. So I'll probably be voting against it, but just being mindful of that.
Councilman Johnson.
I agree with that, but I also think it's a good idea to vote this particular contract down tonight for cost reasons. But I do think we should look into it deeper at a later date, like on a work session, to discuss ways of maybe doing it cheaper if we can.
Councilman Morgan.
With that being said, I would just entertain a motion to postpone this to the March 21st meeting, and then that'll give us enough time, hopefully, to also address this on the 14th during that work session if Acting Manager Betcher believes that's possible.
Just point of order, March 14th or February, our next council meeting is February 21st.
Well, just to give staff enough time and due diligence to reach out to possibly other e-waste professionals and just get some more ideas in the air on what our options are.
Can you restate your motion?
Yeah, my motion is to postpone this specific resolution to March 21st City Council meeting in hopes that staff and council can also come together and speak about this on a work session March 14th.
Okay. I need a second.
You do?
I'll second.
And that's a debatable motion.
Okay, discussion. Councilman Johnson.
I don't think we need to postpone it. I think we should need to vote no on it and then discuss it later and just completely cancel this contract.
Councilman Walsh.
Madam Mayor, I don't think we should postpone it either. If there's something in the future that we would like to see adjusted on this, we can always talk about that on this one. I don't think it's cost effective now. Even diminishing the cost, I would still have to question on whether or not it's the wise move to make in the environment that we're in now.
Anyone else? Councilman
Madam Mayor,
Hopkins.
I concur. I don't think we will gain much information that would change anybody's mind before, even if we talk about it again. The one thing I guess I would like people to do, there's one thing that we know that we can make money at, and that's by recycling aluminum cans. And right now, we already have considerable efforts put into that, and you can actually make money recycling aluminum cans, and good environmentally, saves electricity. It's a good thing. This is just not a winner.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll be casting our vote. Oh,
Just one.
go ahead.
I appreciate all the work you did on this, Councilman Morgan, and you've done your homework, and I appreciate all of your efforts, but I agree that I don't believe additional information or reduced costs will have much impact on how people will view this.
Thank you.
Okay, please cast your vote to postpone to March 21st.
With Councilman Morgan voting aye, motion fails.
Okay, we are back to the original motion. We were at discussion and amendments. Councilman Powell.
I think when recycling comes up, it's good to point out to folks, and this was a hard thing for me to accept because I believe in recycling. I believe it's the way we should live our lives. But Casper there's two unique things about Casper's situation. One is we are so isolated that transporting recyclable materials to a location where they can be processed is expensive and puts pollution in the air when we drive trucks down the highway hauling this stuff all the way to Denver, which is another environmental matter. And the second thing about Casper is, as I understand it, we have enough land to run the landfill for another 1,000 years. And that's a unique benefit that we have here that most communities don't have. We can bury a lot of trash in Casper. And so I think the economics just work against us. I appreciate Councilman Walsh pulling this off so that we could have this discussion, but I think it's because people bring up curbside recycling, and when you really look at the hard numbers, it is an expensive business, and this is not a time for us to take on unnecessary expenses. So I'm going to vote against the contract as well.
Anyone else? We had a little bit more discussion too in our pre-session, and one thing that came out was this is a good possibility or opportunity that we may save our citizens some money on their rates. So I want to point that out. We also talked that, you know, we are environmental friendly, we support recycling, but it has to make sense. And so what I'm hearing tonight is it just doesn't quite make sense tonight. So with that, please cast your vote. What?
Almost.
Please record the vote.
All members voting nay, motion fails.
Council will now consider consent resolutions. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 9B1, a resolution approving a site plan for the construction of Cobblestone Family Apartments on Lot 1, Cobblestone Addition, located generally north of CY Avenue and west of Paradise Drive. Item 9B2, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with Tri-Hydro Corporation for conducting Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessments in the Old Yellowstone District. Item 9B3, a resolution authorizing change order number 1 to the agreement with Haas Construction, Inc. for the Stuckenhoff Shooters Complex project. Item 9B4, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with Raftelis Financial Consultants, Inc. for system investment charge cost of services study. Item 9B5, a resolution authorizing a permit to encroach on public right-of-way with the Wyoming Department of Transportation for the Rotary Park Pathway Project. Item 9B6, a resolution authorizing a license with the Wyoming Department of Transportation for a new storm sewer collection line as part of the Rotary Park Pathway Phase 1 project. Item 9B7, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with Inberg Miller Engineers, Inc. for construction administration services for the Lower Eastdale Creek Channel Improvements Phase 1 project. Item 9B8, a resolution authorizing a professional services contract with Golder Associates, Inc. for preparing an operations and maintenance plan for the closed bale-fill gas collection and control system. Item 9B9, a resolution authorizing amendment number 1 to the contract for professional services with Civil Engineering Professionals, Inc. for the construction administration of the East 21st Street Improvements Project. Item 9B10, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Wyoming Earth Moving Corporation for the Casper Regional Landfill Litter Fence Project. Item 9B11, a resolution authorizing Amendment Number 1 to the professional services contract with Golder Associates, Inc. for bidding support, construction support, and system startup of the closed bale-fill gas collection and control system.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Councilman Murphy. Abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Council will now consider minute action items. These are the business items that do not require a resolution. Please read the consent minute action titles.
Item 10A1, authorizing the mayor to sign a letter of support for a Wyoming Community Development Tax Credit application for the proposed Fairgrounds Trails Residential Senior Citizen Apartments. Item 10A2, appointing Maureen Lee and reappointing Frank Pinky Ellis to the Historic Preservation Commission for 3-year terms expiring December 31st, 2019. Item 10A3, approving the reallocation of capital funds from the reconstruction of Mike Cedar Pool to the installation of a pool cover for the Mike Cedar Pool.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Powell, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passes.
Thank you. Now is the time we'd invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we are asking the following. Please give us your name and address. We won't respond to personnel matters. We refer those to the city manager. Some questions posed may not be answered, and we'd like our guests to limit it to 5 minutes. So whoever's ready, come on down.
Madam Mayor, may I introduce some folks?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight, I noticed we have some friends of ours out in the audience, the Johnsons, and they have a rather unique story. They were the people that put Grant Street Grocery back in business, and I guess I'd like to have them tell their story, just if they wouldn't mind coming forward and sharing it with us.
Sad thing is I even wrote myself a note. Good evening.
My name is Dell Johnson, 902 South Beach, and my husband and our other partner, Susan Holmes, would like to thank Mr. Hopkins for inviting us to present to you our little story of Casper, saving of a Casper iconic restaurant. Grocery, sorry. Grocery. About a year ago, after the store had closed, we were having a little social gathering, and we lamented the fact that it had closed, and oh, what a shame. And our kids went over there when they were little to buy their candy, and Doug Holmes went over there to buy stuff when he was a child.
There's Doug Holmes.
And there he is.
All right.
So,
A native of Casper.
So we were just brainstorming, and after several meetings with other people, we decided to proceed to try to buy the building. There was no business left. So eventually, in July, we were able to purchase the building. We worked long and hard with River Valley Builders and Brandon Daigle to bring all of this about, and we are now open and up and running, and I think from all of the people that have come in to say, you know, my family's been shopping here for 5 generations, thank you so much. Or, I was a delivery boy back when the Schlesmans owned it, thank you so much. So we are very pleased to be up and running.
Well, Doug, you drove your bicycle over there, right?
Well, I did grow up
He was a
Grant
native,
Street, and we're collectively excited that renewing the neighborhood experience and providing something unique to Casper that it's had in the past and was at maybe a risk of not continuing. So we're happy to continue the experience, and also wish to thank our construction company, which was valuable in getting things done, and also maintaining some of the integrity of the original structure, so it does still have a feel of Grant Street in the neighborhood. And also all the local construction people and subcontractors that participated in the construction process. It was really a community event in many ways.
Well, the store is unique to Wyoming, and I know it's been in business for 80 years, and we hope to see you for another 80.
99.
99, okay, sorry.
Next year is the 100th anniversary
All right.
of Grant Street.
Well, that's wonderful.
So,
Thanks for coming down.
Thanks for inviting me.
Congratulations. That's pretty fantastic news. Did council have any questions? You're safe. They didn't. But really, congratulations and thanks for taking that on. That's exciting. So, who else would like to speak to council? Good evening.
Keith Rowland, 542 South Durban. I know the budget process is starting earlier this year because of the certain situations we got in the economy. I'd like to make a suggestion, and that is that we informally use a policy called zero-based budgeting. Not necessarily formally try it, but zero-based budgeting is a theory where you start from scratch, as opposed to using a 3 or 5% increase in this item and a decrease in that item. You start from scratch, where each department chairman starts from zero and builds their budget up from nothing, and that way you may expand on certain areas, such as victims assistance unit, or you may decide that, we really don't need this. We've always had this, but we really, this is something we really can live without. You might want to consider that just as a sort of a scratch sheet on your side of your budgeting process. Is let's try doing that and compare to how we normally do with using variations of what we had in prior years. Another point is I think it was April or May's meeting, I suggested to City Council that we have an A, B, and a C budget. An A budget is what we passed. A B budget is a moderate decline from expectations. And a C budget is sort of like a Gillette budget, where things really got catastrophe, terrible. Right now we're approaching the B budget. I looked at your numbers that were given at the meeting of last week, I believe, for your work session. And I'm looking at the city sales tax revenue. So far, we're not in bad shape. We're down $249,000, just under $250,000. That's doable. That can be tweaked a little bit to be fine. However, if you actually look at the figures, I don't know what this is based on, but starting in February, not January, but February, there's increases expected from prior years for sales tax revenue. I find that unbelievable. I mean, I don't know what the basis is. Since the city's manager is not here, I can't ask him that question, what basis was being used. But if you go forward from based on the numbers we have right now, if you go forward and assume just flat, so what we had last year for the rest, from January to the rest of the year, remains the same, we end up with $1,030,000 of shortfall. That's with flat. If we have what we've averaged so far this fiscal year, which is 17%, then we get a problem. We have 2.37 million short. Now, that's in addition to other possible shortfalls in other parts of the budget for revenue side. Now, if we take the December shortfall and extrapolate that further, we get 23.7% decline. Then we have a decline for just this particular part of our budget area of $2.9 million. My question to council is, first of all, since the manager is not here, I can't ask him what his basis was for the increase. But I have two questions. One is, what action can be taken by the council and how quickly? I mean, is there resolutions that could be passed immediately, or do we have to go through a hearing process, notices in the paper and things like that to make any changes in the budget? And two, what is the council's basically discussion amongst yourselves of the possibility of what are we going to cut? Last year, I suggested that we cut city salaries by 5%, which was met with a lot of hostility, because I figured, you know, if we cut that 5% and if we find we're short, then we can just pull down the reserves and, you know, take out of our savings account effectively. Since we are taking out of our savings account already to balance this budget, how much more are we going to take out? I mean, we're going to take out this year and take out next year. I mean, when do we stop taking out? We took out many millions just to balance this budget, and if we're short anywhere from 1 to 2 or 3 million more, are we just going to withdraw more money from our savings account?
Okay, so let me tackle your first question, and I'm thinking, Mr. City Attorney, you can probably say it a little more eloquently than I can. So his question was, if council wanted to make changes in the budget, can you describe the process and the public meetings, or how would that process work?
Well, generally, you don't adopt the budget until late in the spring, as I recall, in May, after a public hearing. You will have numerous discussions before that in work sessions about the budget. You'll also have presentations by department heads and of their budgets, so you have an understanding of what the basis of those budgets are and what's included in them. And you can make your recommendations of whether you think it should be changed or not. And I think as council's well aware, City Manager McDonald has developed a glide slope based on his projections of where you'll be this year as well as next year, in order to avoid if you will, I don't want to use the word catastrophic, but a major change that shifts services for the public. I believe that the points that's being raised tonight will be considered by council and the city manager. I can't speak for him as to the comments on the sales tax, but he watches that very closely, and he is a certified public accountant, and so he has very great experience in this area. As far as there's no ordinances or resolutions that need to be changed, because the budget has to be adopted with a public hearing in the spring.
But actually, my question was, not to be technical, but if in the middle of the budget year, if we need changes to be made, I mean, for example, Gillette, they made changes throughout the year. Is there something that can be done? Let's say if all of a sudden we find out the next figure coming out is a real disaster, they're like, holy smokes, we don't want to be $4 million short. Is there something that we could do mid-budget year, and how quickly could it be done? What can we do at that point? I know in the process we have an annual one, but is there something interim?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, by law, the municipalities have to submit an annual budget balances.
Right.
However, several times a year, we have made changes to the budget in order to balance the budget. So that is a routine process.
That's what I'm saying, is how much can you make? I mean, let's say if there's like, well, we're going to just start doing this, we're going to take this off, because you basically know, but if you're getting into the multi-million-dollar area, when you're really making significant changes, first of all, do you anticipate doing that, and if so, when? I mean, because what happens is when you get the sales tax revenue, that's sort of like in the past. So if we find out January is terrible, we're in the middle of February, at what point do we decide, whoa, we need to make changes? And how quickly can you make those changes? Because if we get the 2.9 million, that might be optimistic. It would be like 3.5 million. Are we going to go in and then say in June, because you can't go into it, you're going to have to pull out of savings, and because you can't have, like you did last year, you basically had to make a change in the budget from the prior year to get it balanced. Remember that? I mean, I spoke at the hearing, and it was at the wrong time because they were balancing the prior year's budget. What are you going to do this year? And at what time?
I don't know that we can totally predict how this budget session's going to go, but council has the opportunity to do input or make changes drastically. I don't know if any of us can answer what we would cut or change at this point. That's why we have the budget sessions and listen to the presentations with new council members on council too. I think that's going to be a good time for them to study the budget, to come up with ideas of how they would change it. So, Mr. Attorney, if we wanted to change the budget with an amendment, is that one-time reading or 3 readings, public hearing?
That's a, as I recall, it's a one-time reading, but it has to be followed after a public hearing to do a budget amendment.
Okay, so
Which
that
does
would
take
kind of
time.
give you a
It
time
does
frame.
take- There's a sequence of events that basically, if we decide coming forward, we have issues, then it doesn't happen immediately. We're going to have almost like a month and a half to 2 months, depending upon the time framework, where this basically is almost at the end of the budget year anyhow. So at this point, that's why I suggested before that you have a B budget, so it's not like, all right, we already basically know what we're going to be doing, and we can act quickly. This way, we don't even know what you're going to cut. That's why I suggested last 9 months ago, or 8 months ago, whatever it was, that you look at a B budget. I know we have different council members, but you just has a conceptual idea. You know, we talked about this and this, we can tweak. You know, 250,000 you can tweak, that's not an issue. But if you get your sales tax, remember, you have a projection of increase, which is unbelievable. I mean, I don't know if you can put this up, and I'm sure council members have it, but I have what you have here is, I don't know if you can put it up or not, but you have some places 250,000, 300,000 a month increase in the prior year. It just, I mean, I don't understand where they get that data from.
When we can pass those questions on to the city manager when he returns to Councilman Walsh.
Madam Mayor, I think we've discussed this enough. It needs to be a private conversation with you and the city manager. And I want to point out that if we started to speculate what we might cut here, that is very irresponsible. It will concern employees, it will concern citizens, and it's based on nothing at this point. So I know the city manager can answer your questions, but I don't think there's any more benefit in this conversation.
See, that's no offense, Mr. Wells, that's why I adamantly disagree with you. I think what happens is the public voted a lot of people out of office and other people in because they wanted more transparency in the process. I think the public deserves to know what is the thought process at this point, if we do have decreases going forward, what these decreases will be, not coming from all of a sudden after the fact, the Tribune reports, oh, by the way, this was cut, this was cut, this was cut, and the public is like, what happened there? That's why I think the discussion needs to be now, because this is revenue coming from the past. It's not what we're expecting to build and pull up on something. This is revenue coming from the past. And this may hit us for $3 million. Do you have $3 million now that we can cover? And the answer is no.
So
That's why I think it's prudent is to discuss it.
Are there any other questions, Councilman Morgan?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate what City Attorney Lubin had mentioned, the 10-year glide path. The 10-year glide path is not optimistic whatsoever. It's if we continue on the shortfall of mineral taxes and our sales revenue that we rely on, we're going to be at that point where we actually have to cut drastically. We are already anticipating us losing money. As you mentioned, we're going to take money out of our reserves. Current policy is 50% of operating expenses is what we have. I believe the Government of Financial Officers Association recommends at 16.6%. So in 2027 is when we get to that 16.6%, at which point you will see services. So that's saying oil is going to remain low, the economy is still going to be in the gutter. At that point, you might see drastic changes, but currently we're already anticipating sales revenue being quite low, mineral tax revenue being quite low. As you mentioned, if we do hit 3 million, that'll be, that'll be devastating to our budget, in addition to possibly state legislators cutting above the cap funding, affecting us in fiscal year 2019, which will be an additional 3.3 million. So the city manager and staff has done an excellent job in preparing us for a worst-case doomsday scenario. Things are looking better in the oil and gas industry. I work for a drilling service company. So I hear your concern about the budget in particular. However, we're seeing a slow decline, and we're planning on it, but like I said, we're remaining optimistic. So it should improve. That doesn't go to say there could be areas in which we could be a little bit better in or more efficient combining services, but that's for the city manager's job. So I just wanted to let you know the 10-year glide path is us on a downturn. We're going to be on that downturn until 2027, when we're going to be really concerned if we stay on this path.
But Councilmember Morgan, in this case, I'm not talking about what's going to happen multiple years in front of us, because that could change. Is what I'm speaking of in this case is sales tax revenue for the next 5 months. solely on that issue, not the fact what's going to happen beyond that, because what coal prices does, natural gas prices, or whatever. And I'm speaking specifically about this fiscal year. We may find it in June, we have to have a resolution passed to make up 3.7 or $4 million because we have a shortfall. We're going to have to do like last year, where it was a nominal amount, but then we're in June making this decision, and the point is, should we have cut expenditures before that? So we don't have to pull out another, we're already pulling out like $5-6 million from savings. I think this, no offense to the City Council, this reminds when I was speaking with Mr. Rubin, as Chairman of the Board of Citicorp, when he refused to raise capital many years ago to finance Citicorp. So we would not be an issue. They almost went belly up. It's the same thing that you have a mindset is, oh, we'll do this mine down the road. I do strongly disagree with the approach that your council is taking. They need to take the approach immediately to decide what we're going to look at to cut in the budget.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience who wishes to speak to council? Good evening.
Good evening. Dennis Stainsland, 533 South Washington. I don't do my homework like Mr. Rowland does, but I do have total confidence in the city government as far as looking into this and taking care of it. None of us have a golden ball or whatever it is that can predict the future anyhow. So in that respect, I think you got to have faith in the people that are elected to do this job, and I certainly do, and the city staff does a super job every time I've dealt with them. And then, back to tonight's discussion, is an amendment number 1 an increase like a change order to engineering professionals? Both of the amendments, are they like a change order, increasing the fees that we pay those people?
Which ones were you referring to? I'm sorry.
9 and 11.
Which ones?
I guess my question is an amendment the same as a change order? They agreed to do the job for X number of dollars, and we're giving them a considerable more amount of money?
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
I may have Andrew Beamer respond to the actual nuts and bolts of that, but these are amendments to contracts because these are professional service agreements rather than bid projects with contractors. And so, yes, it's an amendment to a professional services agreement to provide for additional services that may have come up during the term of that contract.
But not a change order.
They're not a bid contract like when you construct something.
So you didn't have a set fee, and now you're giving them more money? You're giving them more work?
No, there was a set fee under the original contract, but I'm assuming there was additional services being rendered that the city needed and had to amend the contract in order to get those services. I can have Mr. Beamer speak to the services under the agreement, but it's similar to a change order, but it's an amendment of an actual contract.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, Counsel, I don't know if that answered your question or not, but the city attorney is correct. It's not really a change order, it's a professional services contract. When we put those out, we tell the contractor what we expect to design and oversee during construction, and if that changes during the design process, for example, the CPI, I think we initially anticipated 1,000 feet of water main to be replaced. We then asked them to design an additional 1,200 feet of water main. Originally, there was no sewer line to be replaced. We added additional sewer line that had to be designed and overseen to be replaced. So it's a change in the contract.
I see.
If that helps answer your question.
So have faith in your guys doing your job. That's what it tells me. So, yeah, you're not spending more money for something that you've already agreed to spend money on.
Councilman Morgan, go ahead.
Additional services.
Mr. Beamer already answered the question. The original contract was 3,000 linear feet, as they mentioned, and we extended it by another 1,800. And then in addition to that, the construction company took on some more projects and curbage for that, and it's extended out into June of this year. So they're overseeing the project, and they're continuing to do so.
Okay, satisfied. Now we go back to the work session for me. Casper Housing Authority loan for 433. I left the work session with the impression that Hopkins' motion was to restudy that, and then you read the paper this last week. It was like it was a done deal. They've got their 433,000. Is that correct, or is it still being studied?
No, there was no motion made in a work session. We did get the background we asked for, so we don't make motions in work sessions.
Okay, well, I guess not a motion, but your comment was we would study it more, but you've decided to give them that 430,000 bucks at 1 to 2%?
I don't think the details of that have been worked out yet. It was an unofficial saying for city staff to go forward with it, to hash out the details and then come back to us.
That is, Madam Mayor, that is correct. We're working on the details of a lending agreement and a mortgage, but we'll have to bring it back to council to see if you agree with the terms and whether it's something you want to do.
I'm sorry, I'm smiling because I'm thinking I have no clue what you're talking about, but I wasn't at that meeting, so I'm not crazy. Thank you for telling me I'm not crazy.
Now I lost my train of thought. So it's still being studied, and they asked for 1 to 2%, and I don't know anybody that can come in and ask to borrow money and say, I would like to get it at 2%. A 20-year loan is gonna work up to much more than a 2% over that 20-year period, is my thinking on it. The other one was the smoking public places. I thought it was interesting that our new council members ran on fiscal responsibility, not spending money, and yet we spent an hour on that discussion, and I thought everybody knew it would cost money to approach that thing. I actually voted in favor of the bar people myself, but I didn't think it needed to be proceeded with, and it wasn't. So I was glad that worked out. But I was quite surprised that the new council members didn't think of the economics of it before they brought it up. Employment training was discussed at the work session. Is that being pursued? The gals made a nice presentation. So many people participate, and they're wanting to open it up to everybody.
The warm training, is that what you're referring to? No? Councilman Walsh, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's also the meeting where you weren't able to.
Okay, good. Still not crazy.
Proposal from HR on potential financial training for city employees. That was still, details were being worked out and will be submitted in the initial budget. So nothing's approved or moved forward.
Okay, so it's in the works. Okay.
No more questions from the meeting I missed. I'm no good at answering those.
Oh, why did you miss that? I never did find that out either.
I'm pretty sure I was in Hawaii or something.
More power to you. Still, are there still parked liquor licenses? I know we had a lot of newspaper coverage on liquor licenses, and parked licenses are one of my favorite subjects. So are there still parked liquor licenses?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many do we have parked?
4.
4. 4 parked licenses.
You know, and, along the same line with the liquor licenses, there's been all kinds of interest in opening up new bars and new places. So it didn't tie into me with how many liquor stores or how many bars had shut down, you know. There's still people interested in having liquor licenses and opening business like that. So I just thought that hour was pretty extensive. Does this tell me when I'm up? I'm not up. But anyway, thank you. That's my concerns.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak to council? Good evening. Good evening.
Dale Zimmerly, 3035 Bel Air Drive. I would like to start by thanking all of you for your dedication to what you do here. I know it's a lot of work and takes a lot of time. Something interesting happened. I just finished reading a book. It should be required reading for all of you if you haven't read it, by T.A. Larson, called The History of Wyoming, which was the history of Wyoming. He wrote it, and it ended in 1976. And he ended the book with an interesting statement. There was a bunch of controversy going on then about strip mining and about the reclamation of the mines. Many of you probably remember that. And they quoted L.G. Rawl was the senior vice president of Exxon in 1976. And he said this: "One hopeful sign is a continual growth in the professional manager's sense of responsibility." And I look to all of you as managers of our community, and I think you do have a great sense of responsibility. And while this was going on, when I just finished reading this book, I was also happened to be at the Wyoming Water Well Association annual conference and trade show, and it was held at the Parkway. It was about the same time the announcement was made that the city was ending its agreement with the Parkway for the infrastructure improvements for the thing. And I thought that was the greatest idea, and one of the reasons why is when I was there at the convention, and you go in a restroom, and the tiles moved out of the ceiling, and water's running out of a light fixture that's working, but the water's running out of it and dripping into the urinal. That's place needs a lot more work than some infrastructure on a building they haven't started building. But when that was announced, and Madam Mayor, when you announced about the end of the relationship with Parkway Plaza and the $5 million that was allotted to it, I don't know why one night I woke up in the middle of the night and thought, boy, there's some money there. Now, what is the city council going to do with this money? And like I said, I was talking about the responsibility of being a professional. And I firmly believe that we all need to own our mistakes and be responsible. And the one mistake that keeps coming back to me is the Coal Creek fire. The fire started on city property and ran rampant there. And I know there's a $500,000 liability for the city. And I think that the city should actually stand up and say, hey, we have a little bit extra money here. Let's stand up, take responsibility for what happened, pay this out. And I think that this would make a city that people are proud to be part of, and not a city that hides things and say we can't talk about it. The whole controversy with somebody in the city said we can't send emails anymore because now people are going to know what we're talking about. To me, that's just hiding things. And I think we should just stand up and say, hey, we can help you, let's help you, and own up to what's wrong. Thank you.
Questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience who wishes to speak to council? Okay, with that, we will go around the table and start with Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've got the AMICO Joint Powers Board meeting coming up tomorrow night. And last week I met with the Wyoming Engineering Society and welcome to town. And we had, there must have been 300 or 400 people there, and they've been around almost 100 years also. And they have a total of about 600 members. So it was nice to see those folks there. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Walsh.
Planning for the CNFR is going smoothly, and there's a huge event. It'll be June 11th through the 17th here in Casper. All the city support for parks, for ball fields, that kind of thing has all been lined out, and everything's going to be smooth. I think we're going to see another great rodeo this summer.
Okay. Councilman Powell.
Thank you, Your Honor. In response to your concern, Mr. Zimmerly, what many people don't understand is that it is a violation of state law for the city to give money to an individual. And so we run into some very serious legal problems with a suggestion like that. So it is unfortunate, but it's that's just not something we can legally do. I don't think I have anything else. I'll just be thinking of all of you when I touch down in Tampa tomorrow for softball. So
That's dirty pool.
I might pass the gavel down and you can. Councilman Murphy.
I don't have anything, Your Honor.
Okay, Councilman Johnson.
I don't have anything either, Your Honor.
Councilman Morgan.
Nothing new.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Just a couple things. We'll be attending the Domestic Violence Task Force tomorrow at 10, and of course, leadership meeting, mayor-manager meeting on Thursday. The only other comment that I wanted to make was that the staff, and particularly our city manager, B.H. McDonald, and the other staff members, the administration, department heads, do an amazing job and work within constraints that are very difficult. They need to be pointed out to the work that they do, the work that they bring to us, because we are not professionals when it comes to understanding complex budgets, and they do an amazing job, and they need to be recognized for that. And so that shout out needs to be reiterated, the appreciation for the work that they do, the shots that they get day in and day out, and the appreciation that I have specifically for what the work that they do, and the dear appreciation that I have for those people. So thank you so very much for the work you guys do.
I think that's well said. I don't think there's ever going to be a time that council has to jump in the middle of a budget and make a drastic change, because our employees, our team is already thinking ahead and addressing issues. So that's never going to be a problem. Councilman Hopkins pointed out that we also review the budget at every work session, and that's something new that we haven't always done. So I think we do a pretty darn good job. Let's see. I've been torturing K2 radio every other week. I don't know if anybody's listening, but if you hear it, let me know if I sound normal or not. The sexual assault panel that we are trying to put together is having a little bump in scheduling, so there will be some more information coming out about that, but it sounds like it may not happen on the 13th. So as soon as we have time, date, location, we will get that out there as fast as we can. Sounds like Thursday I'm doing a proclamation for random acts of kindness at K2 TV at 6 or 6:30 in the morning. There was a kudos letter here for the chief and the police department for their work with Special Olympics, so nice job there. And I wanted to thank the Liberty Baptist Church. They sent a letter saying that they have a time frame where they pray for a day for government officials, so we will have extra prayers for all of us. And I think that's all I have at this point. The next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, February 14th, 2017 in the Council's meeting room, and a regular Council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, February 21st, 2017 in the Council chambers. The Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilman Walsh. Please cast your vote. And please record your vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
Thank you. We are adjourned.